Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided.
This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy and other Eagan community television programming is supported by Thomson Reuters, makers of Westlaw Next and based in Eagan. Through Westlaw Next and other innovative online services, Thomson Reuters is the world's leading source of intelligent information for businesses and professionals. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And by U.S. Federal Credit Union, the member-owned financial institution offering service, value, and experience you can trust to the greater Twin Cities community.
Welcome. Access to Democracy welcomes you, and we've had some control room issues, so we're starting a little bit later than normal. But we have a return guest, and it's been, what, 3 years?
3 years, yeah.
Since Tim Wynes was last here, and he was, at that time, the new president of Inver Hills Community College. Now he's the old president of Inver Hills Community College, when the only person, I believe, in the Minskew system who's also president of another college, the interim president of Dakota County Technical College.
There's one other than me, but it's an aligned colleges of Anoka Tech and Anoka Ramsey, up in the north part.
So how does one become president of two colleges and get them both to continue functioning as well as they have been?
So the school, the first thing is the schools are 8 miles apart, 8.4 miles apart. So it's not like we're in different universes. We're the only two higher ed institutions in Dakota County, which helps out a lot. We're part of the Minskew system, which helps out a lot. And how this came about was this unexpected and sudden retirement of Ron Thomas from Dakota County Technical College last spring. Really too late for us for the system to do a search. And it's not unusual for the system to put interims in place, but in this case, since I was already in the area and I knew enough about the school, what Ron and I had been working on some things, the chancellor thought and the board thought that it would be a good thing if we did both of them for a year, which is now going to turn into 2 years. And it's been a really good experience. Dakota County Technical College is just an amazing school. In terms of the sheer both schools are very dedicated to their students, but both colleges, faculties, and staff really understand their student populations, and it's been a lot of fun.
But it has to be a burden on you, I would think, to have the responsibility of two major colleges.
Well, that could be if you didn't do it right. But I think if I ever think it's a burden, I think about a couple of other folks. Chancellor, my boss, has 31 schools, 24 community colleges, and 7 state universities, and his job is so much more complex than mine. I would never even dream of saying to him, this is hard.
And of course, he's a new chancellor also, Chancellor Rosenstone.
He's been there since his 3rd year. He started the year after I had been here, and amazing person, very forward-thinking, great visionary, works hard, just he's really brought a lot of energy to the system and a lot of diversity. He really has gone out and recruited good people to work in the system. Up at Bemidji, the president of Bemidji State College is also over North Community College, which is a very small community college, very technical oriented. It shares the same community with them, but they're two separate entities. And he has dealt with far greater problems than I have, and has done an amazing job. So I've had people to talk to that know what this is like, and it's been really helpful. But they're two schools, and they have different missions, and so it's really complementary.
Now, I was on the faculty for 6 years at Inver Hills,
right.
And I guess there's a possibility that we're going to renew that relationship in the coming year. But one of the things that we had both at Inver Hills and in Minneapolis Community and Technical College, we had burgeoning enrollment during the recession.
Yeah.
People who lost their jobs decided that they wanted to go back to school and get a degree, maybe start a new leaf or turn over a new leaf. What has happened now is that the economy is moving forward rapidly, and attendance in the community colleges has been falling. I know MCTC took a big hit. I don't think it's been as bad.
No, they did take a big hit, but then they're the biggest school in the system. So when they take a hit, it really shows. Inver's been flat the last 2 years. What's happened is just what you said. All the people that were displaced by the recession have come through the system. They're all either back at work or they've at least finished what they were going to do with us. And now we're relying on normal population. And at Inver, we're doing well. We've been flat the last 2 years, which means we've held our own in a declining need, to some extent, a declining population of college-age students. DCTC closed a couple programs that simply weren't functioning very well. We've reconfigured our medical programs, and so we took a hit in terms of student enrollment last year. We'll probably be down a little bit this year, but as we move forward, that's a school that's primed to do really well because it's very workforce development oriented. So it's going to be okay. The other thing that's good for us, and it all depends on where your school's located to some extent. Normandale, to some degree, is almost recession-proof. I mean, it's on I-35, it's on 494, close enough to 35. It's in a terrific traffic corridor and near a lot of major populations. So they open their doors, people show up. Inver's and DCTC have this county to themselves, and the county's population for K through 12 has plateaued and will be plateaued for the next 5 to 6 years. But then it starts to really grow, and what's really great about the students that are coming to us is they're more diverse from a variety of populations, but they're also, for an area that's fairly well developed, a lot of first-generation students. So we just happen to be really in a good place in terms of where people are deciding to live.
Inver Hills has a great campus.
It is. It's a beautiful campus.
It's a beautiful campus, and it is what college should be. Obviously, MCTC is a city college. It's a very different population, probably the largest Somali population in the state. And you don't get the feel at MCTC that you do at Inver, where you see students lounging on the grass and things like that.
There's not a lot of lawn at MCTC. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Inver has the feel almost of a four-year school, and we do offer four-year degrees there through a variety of partners. DCTC is more enclosed. We have different programs there, and it's a little different feel to it, and that's intentional. I mean, it was built originally as a technical school and to house the part of a K through 12 system, and it's evolved over time. And lucky that we have been benefited from capital bonding projects to keep keep our campus at DCTC really moving forward, because it's an enclosed building like it is. It's tough to do, just like it's been at MCTC. There's not a lot of space to do anything except go up. So we've been lucky.
What's the state of higher education in Minnesota at the moment?
Well, it's really pretty. I think it's pretty good. If we were in a position where the system, our system, Minsky's system, which is not part of the University of Minnesota system, if we weren't thinking about what the future is going to look like in terms of employment, you would say, we're really got our heads in the sand. But the board and the chancellor have embraced a vision called Charting the Future, which maintains certainly an allegiance to the liberal arts and the skills necessary to work in the workforce as a liberal arts graduate, or just using the skills necessary to work in teams and to lead and follow, but also a real understanding of what employability means for our graduates and getting those students into the right fields and moving forward, because not everybody requires a four-year degree. And I think our system's really embraced that. I can't speak for the university system, but of course our system is open access. We take everybody. And the thing I like about what we're doing is we're very, very intentional right now on getting people through in a way that's with less debt, more focused on getting to the career that they want to be in. And I think for Minnesota, that's pretty important if you're going to continue the number of Fortune 500 companies that are here.
You know, debt is something that I definitely wanted to talk about anyway, because it has become very expensive, even in community colleges, for students to go to school.
Right.
How do they deal with that?
Well,
how much is available in terms
right.
of student loans and scholarship money and grants and things like that?
I think we're probably pretty typical. At our schools, about 60% of our students qualify for federal Pell Grants, which means if you're thinking about a grade K through 12 level, that means they have people who qualify for free and reduced lunch. They're a little bit above the poverty level or even at the poverty level. That means they also qualify for student loans. Now, we really counsel students very intentionally about what that means to take on student loans, so that they understand that's never dischargeable. You can't get rid of it in bankruptcy. It's a debt that you are going to own. And once you finish school, 6 months afterwards, you start paying those back. So we encourage a lot of students to think about how they can handle that. For our two colleges, you can graduate in 2 years, and it'll cost you about $10,000 in tuition and fees and the whole thing. That's not a bad deal in today's market. What we're offering now at both colleges is a program called Tuition Match Minnesota, where a student has an account at Bremer Bank, and they put into that up to $900. It's got to be money they've earned. That is then matched by federal money, and then matched by state money or by private money that our foundations have raised, 3 to 1. So a student, and they've got to finish a semester of school in good standing. Once they've done that, they can draw that money down. They can essentially pay for almost a year of college. Comes out to about $3,300, a little bit more than that. So that is, and for investment $900, then they get a semester of college paid for, almost a year, really.
And
that's a pretty good deal.
That's certainly a big part of a 2-year program.
Right, but I think, we, even before we had that program, financial literacy is something that both Scott and Steve, our two financial aid directors at each college, have focused on pretty hard in terms of getting students to understand what they're into. Almost all of our students are part-time, and the vast majority of them are.
Most of them are working also.
I think I was about to say, they work, they're part-time, they're working, and sometimes they're the breadwinner in the family. So making sure they don't commit to more than they can. The worst thing, they have to make academic progress. They can't get loans and grants. So we want to make sure the students understand what they're getting into and they can follow through. There's a really great program out of Baltimore, Maryland, that Mayor Bloomberg on his own privately underwrote, that puts people that are typical community college student into a program where they are basically tracked to get out in 2 years or 2.5 years. And the basic philosophy is, get rid of the classes that you need to do college level work, get those done. Track right into your classes, take the number of hours you need to take to stay a full-time student, and no backing off, and do all your financial aid. But the basic premise is that by really staying heavily counseling, advising students that might otherwise drop out, to stay in and not really giving them a lot of choices in terms of taking classes that might not have anything to do with their career or where they want to go, but keeping them focused on graduation. Their initial success rates in their pilot program are really high, and something that I think a lot of community colleges are looking at, which is really focusing on how you get students from point A to point B so that they're on their way to career. In our state, the Minnesota transfer curriculum is a big deal. It's 40 hours you have to get to move. You can get rid of your gen eds and move on to the university. If you get rid of them with us, you don't have to take them at their place, and that's a high focus for us. And if you keep students focused on that, they get through faster.
And you also have a very good foundation that's in operation at Inver Hills.
We have a great foundation director.
Has raised a lot of money. I think they're over the $1 million mark.
We're pretty close, yeah.
And that also gives a lot of scholarship money to a lot of students.
Mm-hmm.
And
we're trying to increase that every year. We've benefit from a lot of generous people that really care about our students. So all that goes into the mix, and with almost 4,500 students on campus every day, we don't scholarship everybody, but amazingly enough, Alan, there are probably another 10% of our students every year that never file any financial aid forms and leave money on the table that they could get. Usually first-generation students, usually students from immigrant backgrounds. Their parents might not have a real clear understanding of the federal government. There's a little bit of fear sometimes involved with what the IRS knows and doesn't know. So there are students that don't never file their financial aid forms out of fear that the federal government somehow is going to come and do something. Even though they're citizens, even though they're legitimate, we know that at least, probably 400, 500 students every single year don't file financial aid forms they could get money for.
So we now know the government knows everything about everybody
They know
anyway,
everything
so
That's
it doesn't
right.
make any
So
difference.
It doesn't matter. So we do try. We try. I have great financial aid people at both colleges that really work with students to make the most sense out of their financial choices.
Now, you were chancellor of a community college system in Iowa.
Yeah.
What's the difference, if any, between
huge
Iowa
difference.
and Minnesota?
Other than the weather.
Other than the weather, yeah.
It's and we have professional sports up here. So in Iowa, it's 15 different community college districts. So I was chancellor of the district. This is the same thing as being a president. It wasn't like Chancellor Rosenstone. And they have 15 community colleges. They have 15 separate boards, a lot like school boards. They're elected by geographical area. So they're run as a lot like school districts, exactly like school districts, depending on property taxes and state aid and tuition. So their difference is they had 15 separate entities that could work together if they wanted to, but didn't have to. And they lacked a central. There was no centrality to it.
That sounds counterproductive.
It was
to
very
really,
counterproductive.
Good
It was
functioning.
It was a frustrating system. If you were a student there, where you enrolled really drove what happened to you next, which is just silly. So the benefit of our system, and there are others, more than just one like ours, but especially our system, is that you're in it, and you can move between colleges, move within the state universities. We have a great relationship with the U, St. Mary's, private schools, other private schools. The seamlessness, it's not perfect all the time, but the bottom line is there's enough cooperation, collaboration, and especially having one central state board and no local boards, it makes it, we can take a state approach. And that's just really beneficial, especially to the students who are going to go in the workforce from Minnesota, so they know what they're getting into.
Now, I know that Inver Hills has taken a disproportionate amount of awards and recognitions, including federal, over the last few years. Tell us about some of those.
The most outstanding one I can think of is that we won I think we were right, I want to make sure I get this right, number 3 in the country in terms of being military and veteran friendly. That's the cool one. Military Times Magazine, which I understand sits in about every base everywhere, regularly polls veterans and also takes a look at people that work with veterans to see who's good at what we do. We have a person named Sue Flanagan at our college who processes doesn't do it justice. She sits down with every veteran that's coming to our college and goes through their GI Bill and what aid they can get and how that applies to their education. And that is, to put it mildly, complicated. And she's just the best at it. And so she's done a lot of work to help students just to transition from being a veteran to being a student. The other thing that she did, I think, that really helps our relationship with veterans is when I got there, you may remember Tim Pawlenty signed a bill that said every college would have a veteran space, and most places they threw them into an available room. And in Inver, where there's a lack of open space, there's a room in the activities building that was the Veterans Lounge, and it was small and it was cramped. And we took space that's big and it's open, and it has places where Sue can interact with the students, where our veterans can work with computers, and it's a real live place for them to be together and yet also be students. But there's a bond between those folks that the rest of us don't have. And that little change, and frankly adding a place that had windows, has had a huge impact on our veteran students. Just the number of people that hang on campus has changed dramatically. The atmosphere, just the way that they see our college has changed, and that's really kind of cool. So that's a neat thing we're doing. The other thing that we're doing that's really interesting is the other end of the spectrum, which is we've got a Department of Labor grant with Apple Valley, District 196 and Apple Valley High School specifically, where we're working with students on STEM careers. So we're working with companies like Kupenauer and other companies in our Dakota County area, literally working from middle school, high school, to college, to the workplace, making sure that students have the skills necessary to go into scientific careers. Now, it may be technical careers, it may be all kinds of things, but really getting STEM skills to hit home and aiming at students that would not normally necessarily, might not be encouraged to go in, especially women. We need more women
starting earlier,
get them early and track them and give them the advice.
Right through the system.
Give them the mentoring that they need to be successful. That's a $3 million grant that a woman named Ann Johnson at our college worked on and got through with 196 in roughly 19 days, and we were one of only, I don't know, a dozen schools that got it in the country. So it's a pretty big deal.
Now, one of the things that's been in the papers a lot lately has been blowback by controversial speakers being invited to talk at graduations and forums and seminars. What's your feeling about if somebody is wrapped in controversy, should the students hear them or not? I mean, my own feeling, to preface it, is that education means hearing both sides and being subjected to differing opinions. But for instance, Condoleezza Rice was to speak
Rutgers,
here,
right.
and it raised a lot of rancor, and she actually pulled out of another school because of the same thing.
She pulled out of Rutgers.
Right. So, is there a place for everybody in college?
Do you remember after Bill Clinton stepped down, no one would invite him to speak at commencement, and Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois, I don't know if you remember this, but Knox College, which is a small liberal arts college in Illinois, invited him basically just to see if he'd come. And he was like, you know, hey, if that's who will take me to come speak. It was part of the rehab process for him after everything that happened during the end of his presidency. And I remember thinking, you know, at the time I wasn't a college president, but going, well, I'd want to hear what Bill Clinton had to say. I mean, guy just finished a fairly, you know, interesting career. And you know, it was one of those things that went off without a hitch, but it's amazing to me. I know when President Obama spoke at Arizona a few years ago, it was a big deal. It's what you just said, education's, we hold forums on campus all the time for multiple points of view. Now, we don't invite, we have a system at our school. We have a student speaker, we have an alumni speaker, and we have a guest speaker, and that's who speaks at ours. We don't have, for the most part, John Kriesel spoke 2 years ago, was very, very moving, talking about his experiences in the war, but and he was an alum, so he was a natural person to invite. So we haven't invited people from the outside. When I was at the University of Missouri, we invited a federal judge who happened to be Rush Limbaugh's cousin to speak. And it was very interesting that he staked himself out as completely opposite of Rush, which was not take too much to do. But you know, he went out of his way to say, I'm not him, and then one of the reasons he came was he was interested in a federal judgeship. He wanted to make sure everybody knew he wasn't him. So I think it's always interesting.
To me, I think that's the way your intellect is developed, by being exposed to differing viewpoints so that you can make an educated determination.
Don't you think it's harder for people to do these days?
It's very hard to do. In fact, Pat Anderson, who was just here being interviewed, was talking about the fact that people on the right watch Fox News, people on the left watch MSNBC, but they're not exposing themselves sufficiently to the other way of thinking, to the other side. And to me, to make an educated judgment, you have to do that.
That's why I watch Comedy Central.
Comedy Central is probably the best news program around. Jon Stewart is a genius.
Yeah.
He
So
really is.
I think it'd be, if we were in a position to invite some, we've had Garrison Keillor on campus. I think you know, those aren't real controversial folks, but yeah, it surprised me the way that people reacted. But that it seems like people are hardened in their position than they used to be.
Now, I've noticed at Inver Hills there seems to be more minority students
we've
than
grown
there were when I was
tremendously.
teaching there a few years ago.
Yeah, we've gone from 10% diverse to 35% of that'd be ethnic, racial, and first generation underrepresented groups. And it's an influx of Somali students, to be sure, many from Burnsville, an influx of Hmong students and Latino students. And it's really added to the flavor of the whole culture of the college. We have a neat
That too is so
multicultural
important, though.
Oh, it is.
For
It's
students going out into the world.
Yeah.
We're not going out into a lily white world anymore. This country has become very diverse.
and you should be able to adapt to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we had a multicultural center on campus that the students really hang out in, and I think it's, you walk by there and you see everybody, all different nationalities, and it's a really good thing because a lot of our students grew up in a very narrow world, so for them to get something expanded, some expansion, it's natural. The other thing is, I think, especially the students coming out of high school and the students coming back and veterans from foreign tours, they're much more at home with people of diverse backgrounds than maybe my generation was.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
How important is a college degree, whether it's from a technical college or a community college or a university? How important is that?
Why does it matter?
Yeah.
It shows that you accomplished something, you saw something through to the end. And it tells, I think, anybody who you want to work with or for, or on your own, that you're capable of seeing something through. The second thing is that I don't know how everybody else feels about this, but to me, as long as you're learning something, and that's a good thing. That's constant, and the degree shows that you're committed to learning and to committing to proving it, which is, I think, huge. In terms of, if you walk into Thomson Reuters and want to be an intern, you better be able to say, I can see something through. So to the degree is the imprint of success. You've finished something, and I finished something in a very specified way. That's a pretty good thing. From liberal arts college, it shows you can read, write, and think, hopefully.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
yes. So what's ahead for colleges in this next decade?
Well, if the chancellor's charting the future works the way he wants it to, and the way the board has laid it out, over the next 3 years we'll be putting a big focus on skills for the workforce, including liberal arts skills, analytical skills, assessment, closing the gap on achievement. Really, as long as we're going to be open access, we also have to get students through and have them be successful, and that's where the focus is going to be. And it's interesting. I mean, MOOCs and anything else that's out there is a vehicle. It's just that it's a vehicle for education, and how we use those is probably less important than the fact that we're educating people to be really successful when they get out of there.
And
That's what we're
to be able
focusing
to
on.
step out of college and step right into
And to
whatever
do
it
something.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's huge.
it is huge. You have two college-age students, if I'm not mistaken,
Got one that just finished and one on his way. Yeah.
and the one who just finished is in what field?
She's just really picked great things. History, gender studies, and Spanish. So one's useful. And she's going to go to law school. She'll work for a couple of years, pay off her student loans, and go to law school.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, you're a lawyer yourself.
So are you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can help.
I haven't been a lawyer for so long that I can't even think
You
about
can't even
it.
claim that anymore?
Yeah. It still is a fallback for me in terms of dealing with students and in my writing. I just finished a novel in which the law plays a very great part.
Do you agree with Nina Totenberg that law school ruins your writing for a long time?
Only if you let it. Only if you let it. We've been talking with Tim Wynes, who's the president of two MnSCU colleges, Inver Hills and Dakota County Technical, and sort of a wide area that we covered here. I thank you very much for
Thank you
coming
for having me
down
on.
here. I don't
It's
know how
great
you
to
took
be
the
here.
time out from two schools to do it, but we greatly appreciate it.
Gotcha.
And come back again soon.
Yes, sir. Good to see you.